Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. We've got a lot to get to this week, including an impressive second week for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice and a lot more box office and streaming information. But before we do that, I wanted to talk to you about something new that's available on the channel starting today. You may have seen before that YouTube offers something called memberships where you can join and be part of a channel. Well, I've decided to launch that right here. And basically what it is a chance to get something custom if you want to join the channel and be a supporter even more than you already are, and also get early access to some of my videos. Becoming a YouTube member costs $2.99 a month, and for that $2.99 a month, you get a custom badge next to your name that changes depending on how long you've been a member. You get some custom emoji that I made myself, which will really come in handy when I start doing more live stuff in the weeks to come. And as I mentioned, you would also get some of my videos early. Now, there are videos like my reviews and stuff that you couldn't get early because they're on an embargo, but I'm talking about stuff like this very show, Charts with Dan, stuff like my ranked videos. It wouldn't necessarily be days early, but it could be a matter of hours early, and if it's a long enough lead time, there could be something that you might get a day or two before other subscribers. I'm really excited by this because I think it's an opportunity to engage more and in a different way, and also allow people who say that they want to support the channel more than they already do to be able to do that. So there's a little join button right down there below this video picture box that you're watching me in right now. I sounded like such an old man there. But I'm really excited by this, and I think it's just a fun new way for people that say that they want to support the channel even more than they already do. And by the way, I appreciate everybody's support, and if you're watching this video, I count you as somebody who supports the channel because I couldn't do what I do if you don't watch the videos that I make. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. Let's turn now to the box office news for this past weekend. We're delayed a day because I did my Emmys recap yesterday, and the #1 movie was Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which off of an impressive $100+ million debut last weekend, dropped just 53.7% in weekend #2 for another $51.3 million. That brings its domestic total up to $187.7 million. In second place was Speak No Evil, which came in about where expectations saw it, at just under $11.4 million. The remake of the Danish horror film starring James McAvoy didn't exactly set the box office on fire, but the budget point on this movie was pretty low, and we'll see if it legs out and is able to come up with a respectable box office total. In third place is the documentary from Matt Walsh, Am I Racist?, which brought in $4.5 million. I'll have more on that in a few minutes. In fourth place was Deadpool and Wolverine. In its 8th week of release, still in the top 5, it dropped 45.6% from last weekend for a $3.8 million total. Its domestic total is now at $620 million. In fifth place was the biopic Reagan, which brought in $2.9 million. Its domestic total is now at $23.2 million. That's a pretty impressive debut for a movie from a distributor at its size. In sixth place, another, just disappointment from Lionsgate. They are just taking L after L after L. The Killer's Game, which opened to just under $2.7 million. Add it to The Crow, add it to Borderlands, add it to all of the disappointments that they've had. Now, they haven't necessarily produced all these films, but they have distributed all of them, and they've got another one coming up in Megalopolis that, again, they didn't make the movie, but they're handling distribution. That could be another major disappointment. So it's been a year to forget, largely, for Lionsgate. In seventh place is Alien Romulus. In its 5th week of release, it dropped 39.3% for another $2.3 million. That brings its domestic total to over $100 million. It Ends With Us spends the 6th week in the top 10. It dropped 44.7% at just over $2 million, which brings its total to $144.9 million. The Forge spends a 4th week in the top 5 with just over $2 million. Its domestic total is now at $24.1 million. And then in 10th place is God's Not Dead, In God We Trust, which was targeted toward the Christian faith-based market, which brought in $1.4 million for a total of $1.8 million. It opened just ahead of Friday to make a little bit more money going into its opening weekend. All right, so let's talk about some of the movies that were in the top 10, and we will start with Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which is now one of Tim Burton's 5 highest-grossing films domestically. You can see that his highest-grossing film is Alice in Wonderland by far, which brought in $334.1 million, followed by 1989's Batman at $251.1 million, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at $206.4 million. But hot on the trail of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice at $187.7 million. million. That brings it ahead of the domestic total for 2001's Planet of the Apes at $180 million. However, when you adjust Tim Burton's grosses for inflation, 1989's Batman is easily number one at $637.6 million. That was a massive hit back in the summer of 1989, followed by Alice in Wonderland at $482.4 million, Batman Returns at $365.3 million. It had a similar opening to 1989's Batman, but did not have the same legs at the box office. Then we have Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at $332.7 million, and Planet of the Apes at $320.1 million. So Beetlejuice has a lot of ground to cover if it wants to make this top five once you adjust the figures for inflation. And when we look at the all-time grosses for movies in September, this is unadjusted for inflation. Beetlejuice lands in fourth place behind the two It films and Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings. It is now ahead of Crocodile Dundee back in the 80s. That was a massive hit, followed by Hotel Transylvania 2, Fatal Attraction, another film from the 80s, Hotel Transylvania, the first Rush Hour film, and American Beauty, which opened in limited release in September, but went on to make over $130 million. I mentioned Matt Walsh's film, Am I Racist? And it actually is the second best opening for a documentary this decade in the 2020s. At number one was the Angel Studios film After Death, which took on near-death experiences from a sort of faith-based perspective. Then we have Am I Racist? Followed by Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain, The Blue Angels, and Moon Age Daydream. And I've gotten a lot of questions asking if I plan to review Am I Racist? And the answer is no, I don't plan to do that. Several people have also asked if I'm scared to review Am I Racist? And the answer is no, I'm not. I just don't want to. My obligation as a box office analyst is to talk about what it did at the box office. I have no such obligation as a critic, and so that is a film that I will not be talking about further here on the channel outside of a box office perspective. All right, let's talk about the race for the number one movie of the summer, which I know is weird to talk about in September. It has been neck and neck between Deadpool and Wolverine and Inside Out 2 for weeks now, but it looks like Pixar's mega hit is going to end up being the champion of the summer. When we look at how these films compare to each other on a day-by-day basis, you can see that Deadpool and Wolverine started out with a big lead. Things have been very close for the last 2 to 3 weeks, but those summer weekdays and the legs that Inside Out 2 showed have really helped it to pull ahead over the last week or so. There's a little insert box down there, which was a suggestion from a very helpful viewer showing basically what the state of the race has been over the last couple weeks, and you can see that Inside Out 2 has steadily been gaining on and has now passed Deadpool and Wolverine for the last week or so. So barring any late game surge from Deadpool and Wolverine, I do think that Inside Out 2 is going to hang on to be number one for the summer, but the bottom line is that both of these movies are massive hits, and it's really just about bragging rights at this point. Dropping out of the top 10 this week after 10 weeks is Despicable Me 4, followed by Twisters, which is out of the top 10 after 8 weeks. Blink Twice dropped out after 3 weeks, and then the film The Greatest of All Time from India dropped out after 1 week. And when we look at the longest runs in the top 10 this year, Inside Out 2 has the top spot with 11 weeks. Despicable Me ends up tied with Kung Fu Panda 4 at 10 weeks apiece. Then we have Dune Part 2, which spent 9 weeks in the top 10, and then 7 movies this year that have spent 8 weeks in the top 10, including Twisters, which just dropped out, and Deadpool and Wolverine, which is still in the top 5, so it could be making a run not only for second place, but maybe for that top spot where Inside Out 2 currently sits. As far as the biggest theater count changes from this past weekend, Afraid, the AI film from Blumhouse, lost 2,597 theaters. It went all the way down to 406 theaters. Another movie that theater owners couldn't get rid of fast enough. Twisters is a distant second. It lost 853 theaters. It's now in 1,399. Blink Twice lost 796 theaters. It's now on the verge of falling out of wide release. 1992 dropped 716 theaters. It's now playing in 159. And It Ends With Us had its first big major theater drop. It lost 641 theaters and is now playing in 2,209 theaters. And if there is good news for Lionsgate, it's that their movie The Crow only lost the most theaters of the year for 1 week because Afraid, with its 2,597 theater loss, is the top theater dropper of the year. The Crow gets bumped down to second, followed by Fly Me to the Moon, The Color Purple, and Drive Away Dolls. All of these movies lost theaters in their third week of release, when theater owners are free to drop any movie that they choose to. And Afraid didn't just have the biggest theater drop of 2024, it also had one of the biggest theater drops of all time. These are the 5 most theaters lost in one weekend if you exclude pandemic-era releases, those day-and-date releases where the movie release structure was all messed up. The rhythm section actually leads the way here at 2,955 theaters lost back in February of 2020, just before the pandemic. Then we have The Darkest Minds, which lost 2,679 theaters in its third week back in August of 2018. A Cure for Wellness lost 2,616 theaters back in March 2017. Then we have Afraid there at number 4 from this past weekend, and then Meet Dave back in 2008, the Eddie Murphy misfire, which lost 2,523 theaters in week number 3. I think the lesson that we can learn from these bottom 3 is to stay away from the all-white poster. Apparently, it is box office poison. Looking at what I like to call our road to recovery, the blue line is the domestic box office weekend average for the years 2015 to 2019. The red line is the weekend average for the years 2021 to 2023. And the dotted black line is what we've done each weekend this year. And you can see that after a big spike last weekend, we fell a little bit below where we have been traditionally, but well above where we've been since theaters reopened following the pandemic. So we continue to do at least as well as we should be doing following that huge slump at the beginning of the summer. The highest performing release from the 2015 to 2019 window was the continued performance of the first It film. The highest performing film from the 2021 to 2023 window was the continued performance of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. All right, let's take a look at movies that played outside of the domestic marketplace. That's everywhere except for the US and Canada. And the number 1 film was Beetlejuice Beetlejuice for a second weekend at $28.7 million. In second place was a film playing in South Korea called Veteran 2, I, the Executioner, which made $15 million. This is from director Ryu Seung-wan and is a sequel to 2015's original about detectives in the Violent Crime Investigation Unit and their hunt for a serial killer. In third place is a film from China called Stand By Me. It's one of a few Chinese films by that name, which brought in $9.8 million about 2 young boys with no family who become friends. Speak No Evil comes in fourth at $9.3 million internationally, followed by It Ends With Us, which brought in $7.3 million. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get our top 5 films worldwide. And Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is at number 1 still. It dropped 45% from the last weekend at $80.3 million. It still is largely driven by its domestic box office. Speak No Evil comes in second at $20.8 million worldwide, followed by Veteran 2, I, the Executioner at number 3, Deadpool and Wolverine, which dropped 30% from last weekend, at number 4 with another $10.9 million, and Stand By Me at number 5 with $9.8 million. We've got a lot more to break down, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsors for this week's show. This video is brought to you by Factor. As the days get shorter and the temperatures drop, outdoor time is precious before winter sets in, so why waste that time making food? Factor's no mess, no prep meals deliver dietitian approved and chef crafted food options that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes, so you can maximize outdoor time and still enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Factor's meals are fresh, never frozen, and cater to your needs with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. Each and every week, you'll have 35 meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from, and Factor has you covered from breakfast to dessert. And I'm not talking about leftovers here. I'm talking about restaurant quality ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Whether you're looking to maximize your protein, manage your calories, or just eat well-balanced meals, you'll find something that works for you with Factor. No shopping, no prepping, no cooking, and no cleaning. Head to factormeals.com/Murrell50 and use code Murrell50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code Murrell50 at factormeals.com/Murrell50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring this episode. This video is brought to you by Mando. If you watch the channel, you've heard me talk about Mando, and I'll bet you've also seen the commercials on TV. So you may be asking yourself, what's all the hype? And is Mando really worth trying? And the answer is yes. Mando is a whole body deodorant, yes, your whole body, that's clinically proven to control odor for 72 hours. And it comes in 4 cologne quality scents, or unscented if you like to, walk around scentless. This time of year, it's sometimes tough to anticipate whether you're walking out the door into early fall or if there's a touch of late summer heat still hanging around. But with Mando, you don't have to worry about that because no matter how much you sweat, you won't smell. I like to do a little Mando 1-2 punch with the bourbon leather body wash mixed with a Mount Fuji stick deodorant. It gives me that perfect blend of aged cowhide and Japanese mountain. But no matter how you like to mix and match, you can do it all with the Mando Starter Pack. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like a mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And I do have that discount code to help you get hooked on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code that equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code DAN at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Thanks to Mando for sponsoring this episode. All right, let's look at some of these specialty charts, but before we do, I want to go back to last week's show and correct a couple of late reporting films that didn't make the charts. First of all, let's look at last weekend's per theater average. This is for September 6th through the 8th. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice in its debut was still number 1 at $24,263 per theater in over 4,500 theaters, followed by the documentary Casa Bonita Mi Amor and Trap, which was attached to Beetlejuice Beetlejuice at a lot of drive-in theaters. I neglected to calculate the per theater average for the greatest of all time last week. It would have come in 4th place at $3,828 per theater, and then a late reporting film was Army of Shadows, the classic Jean-Pierre Melville film, and its 4K restoration. It brought in $3,291 per theater in just one theater. Also, on the limited release chart, there was just one late reporting film, which was the inspiring sports drama You Gotta Believe. It ended up coming in 4th place at just over $155,000, which knocked the film Dee Dee down to number 5. Now let's look at the specialty charts for this weekend, September 13th through the 15th. My Old Ass was number 1. It brought in $23,979 per theater in 7 theaters, followed by Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which brought in over $11,000 per theater, again in over 4,500 theaters. In 3rd place was a black and white 4K re-release of the classic 90s film Basquiat, which brought in just over $11,000 in 1 theater. Then we had the documentary Music for Mushrooms about psychedelics and their therapeutic properties. It brought in $8,144 in 1 theater, and Speak No Evil rounds out the top 5, bringing in $3,377 per theater in 3,375 theaters. Looking at the top films in limited release, at number 1 was Don Da Don, First Encounter in just over 600 theaters. It brought in a little over $1 million. This was the first 3 episodes of an anime series that's launching this fall based on the popular Japanese manga about 2 high schoolers who team up to fight ghosts and aliens. I don't know, that sounds kind of fun. In 2nd place was a movie called The Critic starring Ian McKellen, which brought in just over $200,000 in 556 theaters. In The Critic, Ian McKellen plays Jay Sherman, a portly Chicago film critic. Actually, no, you know what? I'm thinking of the wrong critic. In the movie, Ian McKellen plays a powerful theater critic who finds himself involved in a murder. In 3rd place was My Old Ass, which brought in $167,000 total in its 7 theaters. In 4th is the film How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, which brought in $115,000 in 56 theaters. This is the highest grossing film of the year in Thailand and the highest grossing film from Thailand ever in a lot of other countries. It's about a college student who volunteers to spend time with his grandmother in order to perhaps inherit her money when she dies. And in 5th place is Dee Dee, which stays in this top 5 in its 8th week of release, bringing in $97,000 in just 87 theaters. We are in the fall holiday box office season, which means that we have a newish chart to look at, and Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is easily number 1 at $187.7 million. Speak No Evil debuts in 2nd place, followed by Am I Racist in 3rd place. The Greatest of All Time drops down 2 spots to 4th place with $4.1 million, followed by The Killer's Game in 5th place, The Front Room in 6th place, And Don Da Don First Encounter in 7th place. It's on the chart because it made just over $1 million this past weekend. And remember, this will be the box office chart from Labor Day through the end of the year. So all of our holiday films and all of the big movies coming up will all be listed on this chart. We had some changes to the 2024 annual box office chart as well. The top 8 remain the same, but moving up this list rapidly is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which enters at number 9, bumping Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes down to number 10, and it ends with Us off of the chart. It lasted just 1 week on the domestic top 10 for 2024. And when you look at Beetlejuice Beetlejuice's total, it's less than $10 million away from the number 6 film, Godzilla Kong the New Empire, so it'll be all the way up there. And then we'll see what it does from there, if it'll be able to pass Twisters and end up in that top 5. But a big hit for Warner Brothers for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, and there were some stories that came out this week saying that Tim Burton actually got the budget down to the $100 million range to get it off of streaming and to get it in theaters. So it's crazy to think that even with everything that's been going on and kind of the proof that the theatrical market is a viable financial model, that Warner Brothers still considered putting this Beetlejuice sequel on streaming. That is a relic of a time that I think is rapidly passing us by. Before we move on to the streaming charts, I wanted to, as we often do here on the show, look at a weekend in box office history, and we're going to go back 30 years to September 16th through the 18th, 1994, and this is a pretty impressive lineup. At number 1 was the debut of Time Cop, which I think we all can agree is the most scientifically accurate time travel movie ever made. It opened to $12 million on its way to a total of $44.8 million. In second place in its 11th week of release was Forrest Gump, which dropped just 10.3% from the previous weekend with $6 million. That brought its domestic total to over $250 million on its way to a $329 million domestic final. In its 7th week of release in third place was the Harrison Ford Jack Ryan adventure Clear and Present Danger, which brought in $3.2 million. That film ended up grossing $122.1 million domestically. Then there was the controversial film, and I remember even as a kid, it was an extremely controversial film, Natural Born Killers, in its 4th week of release, bringing in $2.8 million. It made just over $50 million domestically before all was said and done. And in 5th place in its 8th week of release was Jim Carrey's The Mask, which brought in a little under $2 million on its way to a $119.9 million total. So even back in 1994, you can see that this time of year was largely holdovers from the summer box office. It's traditionally a slower time of year, which can allow all kinds of things to jump into the top 5. But what would these grosses look like if we put them in today's dollars? Well, luckily we've got our handy inflation button, and when we adjust these figures for inflation, we can see that Time Cop opened to an adjusted total of $25.6 million on its way to an adjusted final of $95.2 million. Forrest Gump was at an adjusted 11th weekend of $12.8 million and a final adjusted total of just over $700 million. Yes, Forrest Gump was that big. Clear and Present Danger was at $6.8 million adjusted in week 7. Its final adjusted total is $259.5 million. Natural Born Killers is at $6.1 million adjusted, and when you adjust for inflation, it was able to bring in just over $100 million. And The Mask was at $4.1 million adjusted for inflation. Its final total adjusted is at $254.7 million. So that covers everything that's going on at the box office. Let's look at what's been going on in the world of streaming, and we will start with the latest numbers from Netflix. There are some new numbers that are coming out today, but these are the last ones that were available as of the time I'm recording this show. This is for the week of September 2nd through the 8th, and at number 1 was the Netflix original movie Rebel Ridge, which I really enjoyed. I'm still thinking about, should I do a review for it here on the channel? Because I thought it was really good. I love Jeremy Saulnier. It brought in 31.18 million views in its debut weekend. In second place was The Deliverance from Lee Daniels, which brought in 21.8 million views. Then we had the debut of the Netflix original series The Perfect Couple, which, like all original streaming series, is required to star Nicole Kidman. It brought in 20.29 million views in its debut. The Union sticks around in the top 5 with 8.3 million views, followed by Worst Ex Ever at number 5 at 7.2 million views. In sixth place was a movie called The Dead Sea, which is about a group rescued from the ocean, only to find out that their rescuers may not be what they seem. It brought in 6.75 million views, followed by Breathless Season 1, which is a Spanish show about a young resident who must overcome obstacles to become a doctor. That sounds like the premise of about 50 other shows. In 8th place was Incoming, the Netflix original movie that's been hanging around pretty impressively. It brought in 6 million views, followed by The Accident Season 1 at 5.9 million views, and Chaos debuting there at number 10 with 5.88 million views. Chaos is a modern version of Greek mythology starring Jeff Goldblum as Zeus. I may have to check this out. There was a little bit of a change as far as the most watched Netflix shows of the year. Emily in Paris Season 4 moves up one spot to number 9, which bumps Money Heist Berlin down to number 10. The top 8 remain the same, and it's going to be pretty tough for something to compete with Bridgerton because it's the only show right now that has over 100 million views on the year. There's also some change as far as the most watched movies of 2024 on Netflix. The Union continues to fly up this list. It's currently at number 4 at 98.90 million views, which is just behind Lift, and it looks like it is easily going to become the third movie this year to rack up over 100 million views. Society of the Snow moves down to number 5, and the rest of the list at 6 through 10 remains the same, but The Union is a big view getter for Netflix this year. As far as the most watched programs on Netflix of 2024, this is movie or show, The Union cracks the top 5 at 98.9 million views, behind only Damsel, Bridgerton Season 3, Under Paris, and Lift. Society of the Snow moves down one spot to number 6, and Fool Me Once moves down one spot to number 7. Baby Reindeer stays at number 8. We'll see if it gets a viewership boost off of its big Emmy wins this past weekend. A Family Affairs at number 9, and Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is at number 10. So those are the Netflix charts. Let's look at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, these are domestic only numbers, whereas Netflix is worldwide, and they are delayed by a few weeks because I guess that's how long it takes Nielsen to pull the data together. So these charts are for the week of August 12th through the 18th, which was the debut week of The Union and brought in 22 million hours watched, which is a really good debut for a movie, one of the best of the year, which we'll look at in a couple minutes. The Emoji Movie was in second place at just over $9 million. I can only hope that it was auto-played after The Union, and that's why it's in the top 10. Jackpot on Amazon, starring Awkwafina and John Cena, is at number 3. It debuted with 8.85 million hours watched, followed by Night School on Netflix at 6.8 million hours watched, and the debut of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga on Max at 6.75 million hours watched. Then we had some rollovers at number 6 through 10, Jack Reacher, Never Go Back, Trolls Band Together, the Super Mario Brothers movie, Moana, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I mentioned that Union had one of the best debuts of the year for a movie here in the US, according to Nielsen. It is actually tied for third with Amazon's remake of Roadhouse at 22,033,333 hours roughly. I have to do my own calculations to get that number. That comes in just behind Beverly Hills Cop Axel F and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and comes in ahead of the debut week for Damsel. But when we look at 2024 as far as overall hours watched, we have the debut of Beverly Hills Cop, the second weekend of Damsel, which came in at 25.7 million hours, then the debut of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and tied for fourth, we have Roadhouse and The Union. But still, not only globally, but also domestically, The Union was a big view getter. It got a lot of eyeballs for Netflix. Looking at the most watched streaming shows for August 12th through the 18th, Prison Break remained at number 1 with 26.8 million hours watched as it finds a second life on Netflix. The Umbrella Academy comes in second at 23.1 million hours watched, followed by Fire Country, Bluey, and Grey's Anatomy. American Murder, Lacey Peterson debuts at number 6 at 14.6 million hours watched, followed by Family Guy at number 7. Emily in Paris making its debut at number 8 at 13.2 million. Dexter at number 9, and Modern Family, which according to my records is the first time the show has been listed on the Nielsen ratings at 11.4 million hours watched as it plays on Hulu and Peacock. As far as watch time per episode for the week of August 12th through the 18th, American Murder, Lacey Peterson easily takes it with 4.87 million hours of watch time for each of its 3 episodes. That's not quite in the top 5 as far as watch time per episode this year, but it's pretty close. Love is Blind UK comes in second place at just under 1 million hours watched per episode, followed by The Umbrella Academy, Fire Country, and Blue Ribbon Baking Championship Emily in Paris is in 6th place at 377,000 hours watched per episode. Remember, Nielsen measures their data not by season, but by full series. So even though most of that watch time was probably season 4, it counts watch time for all episodes of the series. In 7th place was Prison Break. The Boys is at number 8. Game of Thrones is at number 9. A lot of people going back to rewatch the show after the end of the latest season of House of the Dragon. And at number 10 is Dexter, which again is getting some renewed life after being added to Netflix. It brought in 129,000 hours watched per episode for each of its 96 episodes. When we look at the most watched original streaming series of the year through August 18th, The Boys moves past Love is Blind to number 3, and it's pretty close to Fallout. We'll see if it's able to move past Fallout to be the second most watched original streaming series of the year. Love Island moves up to number 8, which bumps The Gentleman and Reacher down to number 9 and 10. Bridgerton remains the overall champ by a wide margin. Again, Fallout comes in second place. We'll see if The Boys is able to move past Fallout. Then we have Love is Blind and Fool Me Once, rounding out the top 5. And those are all the numbers I have for you this week, but we have a packed week of stuff coming up, whether you're watching on streaming or in theaters. Tomorrow, Agatha All Along makes its debut on Disney+, and I'll have my review of the first couple episodes tomorrow. Also hitting some theaters tomorrow is The Substance. It officially releases on Friday. This is a buzzy movie that I can't wait to see. I'm also going to go see that tomorrow, and I'll bring you a review here on the channel. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff this week. On Thursday, The Penguin makes its debut on Max, which I'm also going to try to watch and bring you here on the channel. It's going to be tough because I have to leave town and take care of some stuff this weekend, but I'm going to do my best to put as much on the channel as I possibly can. Also on Thursday, Twilight of the Gods debuts on Netflix. This is a new animated series from Zack Snyder delving into the violent world of Norse mythology. Also debuting on Thursday on Netflix is Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, the latest true crime series from Ryan Murphy, taking on the infamous murders committed by the Menendez brothers in the 90s. On Paramount Plus this Thursday is the debut of Frasier Season 2, so if serial killers are a little too spicy for you, then maybe Frasier is a better change of pace. Also on Thursday, The Matrix is hitting theaters again for its 25th anniversary. Oh, I see 3 things a day now that make me think, God, I'm old. This re-release is being done through Fathom Events, and the movie will also be playing on Sunday night. And finally on Thursday, The Babadook, one of my favorite horror movies of the 21st century, is getting a 10th anniversary re-release through IFC Films. Then we also have a big day on Friday. Transformers 1 is the banner wide release this upcoming weekend. I'm going to see that and try to get a review for you here on the channel. Also opening on Friday is the film Never Let Go from director Alexandre Aja. Halle Berry plays a mother who has to remain connected literally to her 2 children at all times after a world-ending catastrophe. Unfortunately, this is a Lionsgate release, so I hope for everyone involved that they're able to break their losing streak, for lack of a better word. Opening and limited release on Friday is Wolves. Apple scaled back their theatrical release drastically for this Brad Pitt, George Clooney action comedy from director John Watts. It's about 2 competing fixers who team up for a job gone wrong. Apple did not want to do theatrical so much. They decided to go heavier on streaming, so fewer people are going to get a chance to see Wolves in theaters, but you can look out for its debut on Apple TV Plus soon. In limited release also this Friday is In the Summers, which was the winner of the Grand Jury Prize, the top prize at the Sundance Film Festival this year. Sasha Calle and Leo Mejia star as 2 siblings who spend the summers with their mercurial father, played by Residente. I enjoyed this film. It was not my favorite film at Sundance, but I think it is very well acted. Also in limited release, another Sundance film this Friday, A Different Man, which I didn't get a chance to see. Sebastian Stan stars as a man who has life-changing surgery but can't seem to escape his old life. And finally, in limited release on Friday is Omniloop. Ayo Edebiri stars as a student who works with a professor, played by Mary Louise Parker, to solve time travel in order to save the professor's life. And finally, on Saturday night, I cannot wait to see this movie. We have Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, which is a documentary about Christopher Reeve and his life story. This has the official backing of DC Studios and will also be in theaters on September 25th, which I believe is Christopher Reeve's birthday, or would have been Christopher Reeve's birthday. There's a lot of hype around this documentary, and it's very possible, if the response is good, that it could see an expanded theatrical release or an expedited release on Max. And that's all I got for you this week. Thanks as always for tuning in here to the channel. Don't forget about those memberships if you want to check that out. And of course, thank you to our sponsors, Factor and Mando. You can find out more about them in the description below. I'll be back, it seems, several times this week with more movie reviews, streaming reviews, box office, entertainment news, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.